Hi guys, it's George here again at Optics Warehouse, and today I thought I'd just do a quick little, well, I don't know how quick it's going to be, but just another sort of informal video, another guide, and this is more about just how you pick a rifle scope. Using some Meoptoscopes here to sort of talk you through various bits. Hopefully you'll find this informative. Obviously, you know, if you have any more questions, just get in contact. So, when choosing a rifle scope, anyone who's looked on our website or across any internet site for that matter will see that there's a whole host of options, and it can be a complete and utter minefield. You've got scopes from £50 well above £5 grand, all in various magnifications, shapes, sizes, fitments and so on and so forth. How do you decide what's the right scope for you? Well, I think it's fairly simple once you grasp a couple little things, which is hopefully what I'll sort of impart to you on this video. The main thing, and if you've phoned up and asked for advice from ourselves, you know, one of the first things we'll ask you is, what's your budget? Now, this isn't because we want to sell you the most expensive scope or anything like that. It's out of scopes, as with anything, are incredibly budget dependent. You know, you might want something with XYZ feature, but that's only applicable with altogether on something like a £3 grand Schmidt & Bender PM2. And so the budget determines a lot of what you can get. Now, that being said, especially in recent years with the likes of Arcan and various other brands, Falcon and such, features are just becoming cheaper and cheaper all the time. So it's becoming easier to get everything, but it's still an important factor because the main thing it determines is that glass quality, which is, to my mind, the most important feature of a scope. Now, if you've spoken to me on the phone before, you know I am a complete and utter Meopta fanboy. I've got two at home. That's what I like to use. So that's why I'm using these today to demonstrate, is because I do think these represent really good glass quality at their various price points. So once you've got your budget set for what you want to spend on it, the next feature that I'd say is the most important is the magnification. Now, magnification, that sort of, depending on what you're doing, it could be anything from a personal preference to it needs to be set parameters. So, for example, if you're doing HFT air rifle shooting, you're not allowed above 12 mag. So you are limited to to a specific set of scopes, something like a 2 to 10. Now, because you're using HFT shooting, another thing again in your use case is, well, HFT shooting, for example, they're not allowed to touch the scope after they take their first shot, I think it is. So they go for smaller objectives. I'll come on to objectives in a little bit. But 2 to 10 mag, so for HFT shooting, you'll crank it onto 10 mag, and that's how you're going to use it. If you're doing long range target shooting, you then suddenly want, well, I'm looking at 1,000 meters. You might want 30 mag. Now this is where that budget sort of comes in with it. As you get better and better glass quality, the higher mags look better and better. It's quite easy to make a lower mag scope on a cheaper budget, but a high mag scope on a cheap budget with decent optics is asking a lot, because you're stretching that glass to the limit. It's why budget is an important factor. Also, again, to use airgun shooting, FT. In FT, you're going to use typically higher mag. You're talking 35 as a minimum. And that's for parallax range finding. And so your use case then becomes, I probably should have said the use case is your second most important factor over magnification, because it kind of determines what magnification. If you're wanting an all-rounder scope, here's a 3 to 15. A 3 to 15 can be a very good option for, say, some general hunting, a little bit of light target work. But when I say general use, think your 4 to 16, your 3 to 15, your 624s. They're good all-rounders, let you have a go at everything type scopes. So that's a little bit about budget magnification. Objective lenses. So objective lenses is this section here, determines how much light can be gathered by the scope. Big objective lens, lots of light, great at low light. So for foxing, lamping, stuff like that, you might want bigger objectives, think your 50 and 56 mils. For HFT, you want to keep things in focus as much as possible. So as you get a bigger objective, your depth of focus becomes more shallow. So you're having to refocus more with bigger objective scopes. At extreme distance, it doesn't become that much of an issue, but say for HFT, it really is. That's why a 42 objective is probably the biggest you'd go in HFT. Ideally, you'd probably go for something with like a 24mm, like that sort of LPVO style scope. Main tubes. Sorry, a bit of a transition. Main tubes, it's this section here. There's a bit of a myth, sort of while I'm on light gathering, kind of reminded me. A lot of people say the bigger the main tube, it lets more light in. This isn't true. A bigger main tube gives you more adjustment. So for example, these two scopes here, they are 1-inch tubes. They're not going to have loads of adjustment, but they're more generalist hunting scopes, so they don't need loads of adjustment. You're just going to zero once, probably hold over. Target scope where you're dialing, yes, 34mm tube might be more desirable because it's going to give you loads of adjustment. What a bigger main tube can do is, if you imagine this tube here was slightly wider, the light from here wouldn't be coming down at such a sharp angle, and so it can reduce aberration when you're looking through it. It's not letting any more light in. Light getting into your eye is determined by the exit pupil. If I turn this round, if I take my phone and shine the light through it, hopefully you can see a little dot coming out the lens. That's the exit pupil. Now, what mag is that set on? That's set on 3. So if I crank that up to 15 and do it again, hopefully you can see the dot. Hopefully this is showing it off. That dot will have gotten smaller. That exit pupil, that's the amount of light that hits your eye. It is determined by objective size divided by magnification. That's what controls the light getting to your eye, not the tube of the scope. That is just the physics of light. There is no getting around it. So just a bit of myth busting there. Other features to consider when you're choosing your scope. Turrets. These are cap turrets, great for hunting scopes, or out in the field scopes I should say, because once they're set, that's it. Put the caps on, you're not dialing again. You know it's zero to where you zeroed it last. If you are target shooting, you're moving from say 500, 800, 1000, whatever it is you're doing. You want quick and accessible turrets. These ones here are lift up to unlock, and nice audible clicks, which are really tactile actually, they're really nice. For your long range dialing. And then other things like zero stops come in. I know this one has a zero stop. Whilst I'm on the subject of turrets, the click value. So the two click values that are common across shooting is MRAD and MOA. MOA, minute of angle, minute of arc. For all intents and purposes, it's the metric system. Typically it's quarter or eighth of an inch movement. So per one click, it'll move it a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch. What that means is essentially for MOA scopes, for pretty much most of us, we find 10s, 5s easier to multiply and do the maths with. This is fractional and it's in 12s, 24s, things like that. It does mean a finer adjustment though, so you'll find bench rest shooters like MOA more because they can get a super fine adjustment. If you're long range shooting though, it means you're going to be doing a lot more clicks, using your turret a lot more than compared to an MRAD shooter. So MRAD, or mil, you'll sometimes hear it called, still for milliradian, is essentially the metric version, and that is done in milliradians at 100 meters. 1 milliradian is 10 centimeters. The scopes are typically either 1/10, so a centimeter at 100 meters, or 0.05, which is 5 millimeters at 100 meters. The reason you'd go for one of those is, one, you either like the metric system, you just find that easier, but also you typically a slightly coarser click value. So if you're dialing a lot from doing a lot of extreme distances, you're not doing as many clicks, and so it's easier to set zeros and hit slightly bigger targets. For most of us, it doesn't really make much difference. Most of us are just going to zero the scope once, and that's it. If you're just going to bolt it to the rifle, zero, it really doesn't matter. It's just pick the scope that suits you better in terms of glass quality and other features. So that's a quick aside on turrets, adjustment values. Other things to consider: parallax. So all these scopes here, these are side focus scopes. Show you here. You'll hear parallax, focus used fairly interchangeably. Essentially, some of it is getting your imaging focus, some of it is removing parallax error. For the vast majority of, say, airgun shooters, I'd say this is a fairly important spec. So these two scopes here come down to 10 yards. So for airgun shooting, where you can, if you're rat shooting, you will be shooting that close at times, sometimes even closer. Be able to wind down really close. One means parallax error is eliminated. What parallax error is, or the way to test for it, if you look through your scope, see your crosshair up on target, just pull your head back slightly. So if you imagine I'm looking through, I'm aiming, pull your head back slightly and just very slowly wobble it side to side. If the ret, or crosshairs, whatever it is in the scope, starts to move with you, there's parallax error. Can lead to slight misses, things like that. And to know that you've properly adjusted, you turn your side focus. One, a good indicator is that your image is in focus. Typically eliminates it, not always. And so you just move that until the parallax error is gone. Like I say, airgun shooting, this is more important. Typically, I'll say on rim fires and some centre fire hunting, it's not that big a deal because you're far more point shoot, lower mag stuff, it doesn't come in. Target shooting, again, another bigger issue. You're using higher mag, which makes the focus far more prevalent. So if you're not in focus, you'll see, or if you're at 50 mag, say, you'll have a blurry image, so you will need to tune that in. Old school scopes were always a AO, or adjustable objective, i.e. at the front here. Pretty much most modern scopes are all side focus. Does tend to bias against left-handers, so maybe something to consider. But yeah, it's down to the type of shoot you're doing. If you're doing long range shooting, yes, you're definitely going to need one. If you're doing quick point shoot hunting, it's not that big an issue. If you're doing some really close niche, airgun pest control, you need something that can parallax down to that distance. Another feature to maybe consider, now this is probably the least important spec to my mind, that is an illuminated ret. So this scope here, that's got an illuminated ret. Usually you see it as a little turn dial on the parallax knob there, make sure that's off. What it does, it will light up either the entire ret or a portion of that ret to make it easy to see against the background. I very rarely have to use this, but other people, it's a really important spec. Again, you guys know your eyes better than I do, or any of us here will. You'll know if that's an important spec to you, and it's something just to consider. So overall, the sort of takeaways from this video are, when you're deciding what rifle scope to go for, determine your budget, determine your use case. That will then determine your magnification, and then click values and all that comes secondary after. I hope you found that informative. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a ramble for you. If you want any more information, please get in contact and I'll see you later.